So, a while ago I did a video breaking down some things that I'd like to see added to the continuity drawn from Apocrypha, and I thought it would flesh out the Star Trek universe, and well, some of them came true. So, it's about time I updated that list with a new selection and 5 more things I want to see added to canon. At the end of the video, let's look at the last 5 things I picked and see where they ended up as of this point in time. For now, starting with the first thing I think should be added to canon. First choice for this list. Benjamin Sisko created the USS Defiant. What is true is that the Defiant was generated by Starfleet in response to a threat posed by the Borg after the Battle of Wolf 359, but the design was shelved because it was overpowered and considered too aggressive for the Federation. However, it was brought to the fore in Deep Space Nine during the Dominion War and proved itself in combat as the UFP entered a darker time. By folding into the lore that Sisko had a hand in its creation, it adds a lot more to his character, and the reasoning behind its assignment to Deep Space Nine. It's understandable that the Federation would commission such a vessel as the Defiant in the face of Wolf 359, and Sisko certainly was affected by it. He lost his wife to the Borg and ended up a single father. Delving into creating the Defiant, is it any wonder that the ship ended up so overpowered? The creator was certainly looking to vent against some Borg, having seen firsthand the destructive power they can bring to bear. This vessel was stored away and the design shelved in favour of a more reserved one, and Sisko moved on to help Bajor rebuild, healing himself as he did so. But when the Dominion threat began to rear, he returned to Starfleet to dig up a product of his trauma and wear it as armour, now in a far better position to handle himself and the temperamental craft. The Defiant goes on to serve admirably in the Dominion War, and Starfleet appointing it to someone who has had a hand in making its prototype makes far more sense than handing it to someone who would be completely unfamiliar with the vessel, what with its much needed tinkering. Speaking of Sisko, here's my second entry. There have been a string of comics that cover his return, as well as novels that also include the emissary, war hero and father returning to Deep Space Nine. Now, he does not always remain on that station, with the most recent comic stint putting him on the bridge of the USS Theseus on a mission concerning the Prophets, and while this covers a rather large series of events with substantial impact on the greater Star Trek universe, it's not for all this that I want it to get a shout out in the shows. Honestly, every time Apocrypha chooses to make a big deal about something, I treat it with a pinch of salt, as something the main continuity will never pick up. But the return of Benjamin Sisko, can we at least get some confirmation that he has returned? A date of that? Even if it's just a mention in Lower Decks or something. Someone mentions contacting him and the reply is, "Oh, he's been retired on Bajor since he returned half a year ago." Or something. Avery Brooks has said that he's not really interested in returning to the role, he's happy vibing with his music, which is fine. So I don't need a whole new series featuring him, or even a cameo, but some knowledge that he got his happy ending and was reunited with his family would be great. 3. Star Trek made a couple of lazy reuses of 200-year-old ships in the panning shots of Star Trek Picard. The shuttlecraft I'm not too annoyed at, because having them repurposed as civilian traffic ships is not much of a stretch, but the McGee class still operational? That is a stretch. However, not an impossibility. With the inclusion into canon of the Gagarin class starship, it could bring with it the origins of that vessel too, which would nicely tie up this dubiousness. The story goes that back during the Klingon Federation War of the 23rd century, Starfleet Yard 39 in the Tellar sector was irradiated by a star in the system with baryon radiation. This means that it was uninhabitable for a long time, until the radiation had decayed enough to reclaim the yard, and the sizable quantity of ships in various stages of construction, repair or refit. This can be used easily to explain the sudden appearance of these ancient ships and shuttles in the turn of the 25th century, as well as being the origin of the Gagarin class. The Gagarin is basically the already constructed frame of a Shepherd class, but finished up when the yard was reclaimed in Picard's time. It would also be a nice and easy way for Starfleet to help replenish its fleet after the Dominion War and damage of Utopia Planitia. It's a nice fit that smooths out some outstanding issues for me. At 4, I picked The Adventures of Prime Universe, Gabriel Lorca and Ellen Landry, as covered in Star Trek Online. It has long been a bugbear of mine that Landry, seemingly a promising character that clearly had history and respect for this otherwise stress-inducing captain of the Discovery, was done dirty multiple times. First off, she dies to the tardigrade that she is fully aware is immune to phaser fire, considering she was there when it was first encountered. So her letting it out because she was impatient feels forced and like it needed to happen to make the creature seem more of a threat. Then, when she was revealed in the Mirror Universe, she was unceremoniously killed off there too. Then again, in Season 3 during a potential alternate timeline. We also get to see nothing of our real Gabriel Lorca aside from what we hear, and that he was a respected captain. His early career is also covered in the novel Drastic Measures, but it's his and Landry's time on the USS Boran that I want to focus on. It's during this arc that we see the battle at Pryor's World that is mentioned in his history, and the mission has several plot points where the switchover to the Mirror Universe Lorca could have occurred. Playing it and trying to figure out when it happens is pretty fun, but it's undeniable that at one point we're working alongside the original Lorca, where he is pragmatic but self-sacrificial and determined to not let anyone die that he can prevent. We see the loyalty that Landry places is earned before becoming misattributed to his mirror counterpart. Additionally, we see how Landry became far more severe when she loses her fiancé and, if anything, seems to relish and support, air quotes, Lorca's new, more militaristic and merciless approach to the war. It's some much needed characterisation for the pair and just what I wanted from these two. Good stuff. And finally for this list is the biggest addition that would be cool. There have been stirrings and mentions in the background of the Romulan supernova being more than it appeared. The books, Last Best Hope and Dark Veil, both alluded to the supernova being artificial in origin, a plotline also covered in Star Trek Online, although probably for different reasons. However, the shows have yet to make a mention of this, which I'm alright with because it is something that I feel deserves a larger plot than a one-off reference. The continuity of these novels is said to be in canon to the shows. However, Star Trek has never really had the approach of Star Wars recently, so I take this with a grain of salt. Either way, the fact that the supernova was so large and swept unexpectedly through Romulan space with such ferocity needs more context to it than Romulan infighting and secrecy. Although these are believable contributing factors to their bodged evacuation attempts, whether due to tampering or negligence, the acceleration of the star into an explosion would go a long way to explain the rapidity of the destruction and the fact that the explosion's devastation was said to be so widespread, often cited as spreading into subspace and travelling at multi-warp speeds. Making this canon not only adds the verisimilitude of the event, but creates a potential overarching mystery that could be the centre of a new narrative, if someone has the skill and guts to tackle it. After all, we also learn that more ancient civilizations were also wiped out by a supernova, and it would be cool to see some looming threat all tied in. So, in the original video, the first thing I wished to see in continuity was Garak's future, and that of Cardassia in total, and well, this has yet to emerge in any way. But the Cardassians are certainly depicted as still being around, and not exactly as a major issue, so I guess some things are good here? The next thing I looked at was the state of the Romulan Star Empire post-supernova, and this is more or less still unfolding. We've yet to see a fully fledged new Romulan power take over, so I still want to see the Republic, but the Romulan Free State still exists, indicating the disparate nature of the fractured empire. The adventures of the USS Excalibur are still a mystery. However, we do have a Captain Elizabeth Shelby, with her going on to rise to the position of Fleet Admiral. So at least she is doing well for herself. But we have seen the Lunar-class USS Titan return in Lower Decks and its successor in Picard, so while the adventures of that vessel might still be up in the air, the ship itself definitely existed and we get to see some time on the ship. Would have been nice to see some of the reference to past novels and adventures though. And the final thing I wanted was to see development in slipstream technology. And we get this for sure with the recreation of the Dauntless in Prodigy, as well as the associated projects like the Protostar looking into alternate warp drives. So I'm happy with this. Slipstream seemed more than a single-use plot device because, well, it was used twice at least, so readdressing it was needed for the believability of technology in Trek. Transwarp failed, Spore Drive falsely considered a dead end, Coaxial Warp Drive was never addressed again, so it's good to see that Starfleet is not totally inept at developing faster than warp alternatives. There we go then. A look into the events that I want to see folded into canon, drawn from the surrounding media. Some are bigger asks than others, but I feel these add to the world building of Star Trek lore in a positive way. Who knows if we'll ever see anything like this emerge, but hey, we got the canonising of the Odyssey-class Enterprise F, although its entire career remains off-screen at this time. So, until the next video, I've been Rick, thanks again, and all the best for the new year, even though that dates the video. Thanks again, and goodbye.